How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We got Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly here. Is my mic working?
I hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, because I'm getting, like, really bad connection here. Okay, well, anyway, now it's fine. Okay, we'll keep going anyway. We will be here for the next 2 hours. Our special guest later in the first hour, and throughout the second hour, will be Tom Pritchard of World Wrestling, formerly of World Wrestling Entertainment. We'll talk about his career, his recent no longer being with the company. He was a long career as a professional wrestler and then worked in the office in developmental. We've got every single phone line lit up right now, so you're not able to get through. But we will give the number when we start getting into the call and some lines become available. Very sad news this week. This has actually been the last 2 weeks have been pretty sad with the death of Jim Barnett, the death of Dr. Wagner a couple weeks ago, and of course on Wednesday, I believe it was Wednesday night, the death of Ray Traylor, the Big Boss Man, and that one didn't see that one coming. It's one thing with Jim Barnett, who was 80 years old, and we knew that he was in bad health, but Ray Traylor, I had just seen him wrestle. Like literally days earlier, I got a tape from Japan from August 31st, and he was there in that IWA tournament, and wow, that one, and being young, having young kids, it's a tough one.
You know what really surprised me about Ray Traylor was I was shocked by the amount of response I got from people that were just saying what a wonderful, wonderful person he was. And I'm not shocked that, like, people thought that he was wonderful, but it's like I got more about him than a lot of other guys. And he's a guy that when he was alive, you never really heard that. You know what I mean?
I always heard he was a nice guy, but that thing, he was, I never, put it this way, I never heard of him having any enemies or anything like that. He was, him and Kurt Hennig, of course, were like, joined at the hip in when I remember him in WWE days, before that, obviously, he was with Jim Cornette. When he first first got his first break with Dusty Rhodes and everything in the Crockett promotion. And, I never heard anything bad about him. And, he was a great worker, until the injuries caught up with him. Late in his career, he was not. But when I was reading your newsletter, and I guess this is something that a lot of people aren't, no one's going to be familiar with. What am I talking about? But, usually when I read Figure 4 Weekly, it's one of my more fun times of the week. I won't say it's my most fun time of the week, which I would have said at certain points. It's one of the most fun times of my week because I actually have so much fun with my kid now. And just with my family, but I was floored when I was reading about Buddy Wayne, who's kind of like Buddy Wayne's the guy who trained you in wrestling, right?
Yeah. And
Shauna, and I don't even know her last name. Do you know her last name?
I'm gonna get in trouble for you even asking me this question. I'll just say Moretti.
Okay, but I've known Ed Moretti since I was a young kid, and he's Ed's niece, right?
Yeah, she's Ed's niece. Yeah.
Yeah, she's Ed's niece, and I've met her at Cauliflower Alley before. And they got married.
I'm trying to think of, like, for people that don't know Buddy Wayne, a person like that.
Buddy Wayne's kind of a stereotypical wrestler to me.
Yeah, but more. Like, I've known a lot of wrestlers, and I only know one Buddy Wayne.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's more to the extreme, but it's your
He's a pro wrestler to the bone.
He's a pro wrestler who my main memory of Buddy Wayne was when I didn't get any sleep.
That's right. You'll never forget.
I know, I'll never forget it. I didn't get any sleep, and he's waking me up at 6 a.m. to train.
That's right.
I'm not training. And he didn't want to miss a day.
I've been waiting for like a week and a half now for the phone call saying that this is all some huge rib, but it hasn't come yet, so I believe he's really married. Like, I don't even have words to describe how shocked I was to get this phone call and how much in disbelief I was that this man could ever be married. And he's married. So
yes. And how old is she? Because I
think she's my age.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
She looks young.
27, 28, somewhere around.
Oh, okay. I thought she was younger. She looks like a model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did some modeling for a long time. So.
Yeah, she's tall, very pretty girl. She was very nice when I met her. I guess we should get out off of that subject because nobody knows her. Back to Ray Traylor. I think he died of a massive heart attack on Wednesday, and you know, we go through these, you know, it's part and parcel of professional wrestling. I don't know if, you know, that makes it easier or harder to deal with. I mean, just so many of them. It's like it's a real sad thing when you look back and if you watch a tape of, it doesn't even matter the territory. You know, you watch 1990, 1985 wrestling, and the first thing that strikes you on the tape, if you watch like a whole show, is just how many of the people are no longer with us.
Yeah.
You won't find that watching. I mean, you'll find it to a degree watching other TV shows, but not like wrestling.
The 80s really did something to a lot of people.
It was a wild and crazy time. I mean, you know, the cocaine and the steroids and the schedule and you know, and again, I'm not saying, you know, Boss Man died of a heart attack, and it may not have been related to any of this. You know, I mean, it could have been like Gary Albright. In fact, I did hear, and I'm going to talk to the coroner tomorrow, but I did hear that he, you know, unofficially, I guess that he had some major blockage, which may just mean, you know, that none of that may have even played a part.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in, you know, but with a lot of them, it played the major part.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, his friends, you know, Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude, for example. But hopefully WWE, I mean, obviously they're going to acknowledge it on Monday. I guess they didn't have time to do it on Thursday. I mean, he was, you know, an integral part of the company. Hogan Bossman, everyone will remember Hogan Bossman on Saturday Night's Main Event, who saw it. I mean, you know, match was 15 years ago, and I vividly remember that match. It was one of the best Hogan matches on Saturday Night's Main Event. Maybe it was the best one. I don't know. It was one of the best ones that he ever had, at least on that.
My memories of like wrestling during that period are so vague because I was young, but I remember that suplex off the cage like it was yesterday.
I remember it real well because I saw it 3 times. I saw it in Madison Square Garden, and I saw it at a live show that I was at in Chicago. And they did some business. I'll tell you what, I remember that Chicago match vividly. I mean, because it was, you know, sold out, Rosemont Horizon, and I think it was except for when they had WrestleMania there, up to that point in time, it was the all-time record gate that they'd ever had in Chicago, believe it or not, was Hogan Bossman cage match. And, you know, it was 2 days before the real famous Flair Steamboat match in Chicago. And, you know, I mean, it wasn't as good as the Flair Steamboat match, but, you know, it had heat. I mean, I remember, you know, when Hogan came out, and this is the peak of Hulk Hogan. And, I mean, when he came out, you know, he got the biggest reaction of anyone that weekend, and people were going like, just wait till you see the Road Warriors, you know, because the Road Warriors were super over in Chicago as well, and they would always get the big pop. Wait till you see the Road Warriors on Sunday. And, you know, then the Road Warriors came out on Sunday, and, you know, of course, great pop, but it was nothing like, you know, Hogan. And when they did the superplex off the cage, I mean, you know, that was, I don't know if it was the first time they saw it, it was the first time anyone in that building had seen it, first time I saw it. That place was buzzing for like 2 minutes from that spot, and they were smart enough that they lied there for that whole 2 minutes rather than, you know what I mean? Rather than,
yeah, that's the way to do it.
Like you would see now where you would get up and then you would forget that you even saw the spot. And that's probably one of the reasons why the people who remember the spot from the Saturday Night's Main Event match still remember the spot today and don't remember Kurt Angle doing that moonsault off the cage or something like that. Oh, actually, I think people do remember the Kurt Angle moonsault a little bit. Bryan's retired from wrestling. What's the scoop?
I'm done.
You have to explain why.
Well, this was actually a really long time coming, like since last June. It was just, I think that I just wanted to be a wrestler for a long time, and it sort of got out of my system after a while, because it got to the point where, like, there'd be a show that afternoon, and I'd be thinking of things that I could be doing instead of wrestling, or I would show up there, and, you know, I'd have fun driving there with my friends and everything and getting to the building, but then I'd be like, oh my God, I gotta wrestle tonight. And it was like a horrible thought. And, you know, at that point it was just like, well, this really isn't fun anymore, so why should I still be doing it? So I'm not anymore.
Now, I mean, when did you get, or did you ever have aspirations of doing, like, say, WWE TV or going somewhere with wrestling?
I think I had aspirations of WWF TV when I was, like, 14, like, before I really knew anything about what the business was. Like when you still have those ideas of it being glamorous to be a pro wrestler and everything, but, you know, it was a matter of months into my indie career when I realized, you know, this is fun on the weekends, but this is not my life.
Yeah.
And it will never be my life, and I have absolutely no desire for it to ever be my life. So I'll do this while it's fun, and when it's not fun, I won't do it anymore. So.
Okay. What was your reaction this week on when Kurt Angle pulled out the frickin' gun?
I was glad I retired. No, the thing was, like, that was one of those moments where you're watching it and, like, all storyline stuff and everything goes out the window, and, like, the only thing I could think was, what was the Big Show thinking? You know what I mean?
What was the Big Show thinking? I was thinking, what are they thinking when they delve into this? What's everyone involved? I mean, it's not that someone came up with the idea, because people come up with goofy ideas all the time, okay? But
it was the Big Show said yes, and then no one squashed the idea.
It's not even Big Show saying yes. It's that no one squashed the idea. You know, whoever came up with it, and they just didn't go, hey, you know, we don't go to these extremes in wrestling. And especially now, you know, when you have a miscarriage and a gun, you know, on Monday and Thursday of the same week, you know, we say it before, but there's a reason this thing is declining. I mean, companies that have gone in this direction, this is a bad direction.
Yeah. I think it's almost like an annual thing where Vince loses his mind, because it was somewhere around this period last year that they were doing the necrophilia kick, and there was something stupid every Monday and Thursday for weeks on end. And then they kind of went back to wrestling for a while, and it was somewhat normal, but it's just like, you know, things don't look good, and so Vince loses his mind.
Well, they're desperate for ratings, and they're desperate to stop the decline, and pure wrestling is not going to stop the decline, you know, because they've done pure wrestling and done all kinds of great matches this year. You know, you can't take that away from them. They had good matches on Monday. You know, it was the weirdest thing because, you know, they had a great main event on Monday. You know, Michaels and Jericho had, you know, a nice television match. Not a good finish, but it's you know, that's TV. You're building to something else. So that was fine. Yet
I think there's just something where sometimes, this has happened a lot lately, where you watch the show and sometimes it's like a Raw that's entertaining, but then when it's over, you're thinking, well, that was a fun show, but what the hell was the point of it? And I don't think you should ever be thinking that at the end of a wrestling show.
I think that I've been thinking that a lot on SmackDown when they've had good matches. You know, it's like, well, this wasn't a bad show at all. I mean, I haven't hated a lot of the SmackDowns, but the direction of SmackDown and where it's going, you know, nothing's really gotten to me. And this week's Observer, the one that's out right now, got some history on the Tokyo Dome, Jim Barnett. We'll have more on Jim Barnett this coming week. More on Ray Traylor, the big boss man. Lots on Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, what their status is, where the negotiations are going. They were all on TV this week. Hogan, Austin, Mick Foley, Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon. It's too much on one show. I think they could have saved it. And I wonder if people who, you know, they had a slightly, there was actually, you know, the rating was actually not up from the week before, but they didn't have, Los Angeles wasn't figured in this week because I think they had the Dodger game. I think it was Dodgers on Thursday night. That's why it was preempted. But so the actual rating, the real rating they would have gotten had they had LA, would have been the highest for a SmackDown in a while, but not up that much. You know, only up like about a little over a tenth from the week before, with advertising all those names. And I don't know. I think they would have expected better. I think they would have hoped for better.
I think I predicted a 3-1. So.
Well, so
I don't know. I just didn't see this really drawing any fans that hadn't been watching SmackDown. Like, number one, because I think most fans that aren't watching SmackDown weren't going to know that these guys were going to be on there. And those that skip SmackDown every now and then, I just can't see them, you know, caring.
I don't know. They pushed pretty hard, and I mean, you can't get bigger. You can't get much bigger than the return to television of Hogan and Austin.
Yeah, but I think people knew that it wasn't like they were going to be wrestling each other.
Yeah, but I mean, the average television viewer, I mean, you know, they didn't know that they weren't going to be there. I mean, I think that they pretty much knew they weren't going to be wrestling. But if you're not going to get the curiosity over Hogan and Austin with all this time off, meaning that much to ratings, it scares me. You know, but anyway, we will go to Ed in San Antonio, Texas. Ed, you're first up.
Hey guys, what I wanted to talk about was a little bit of what you were talking about earlier about the drugs and the wrestlers from the 80s. And my question is, I know like nowadays, usually when they have a drug problem, it's more likely it's somas or painkillers. And has it always been painkillers? Like in the 80s, was it cocaine? Was it marijuana? I mean, does it?
I mean, I think marijuana is fairly prevalent right now. Cocaine was a lot more prevalent in the 80s than it would be now. I mean, I think that goes just for society. The biggest short-term problem among the wrestlers now appears to be painkillers. Long-term, I don't know. You know, again, you know, the concern over steroids is never going to be there because, you know, they help your career. They don't hurt your career. You know, your life, you know, your later life Do they work against you? You know, probably they do. But I will say this also, by saying that, there are so many wrestlers who are in such denial over the fact that that's even possible. I mean, you know...
Possible!
What?
I think you should make that clear, that there are wrestlers that don't think that it's even possible that steroids could be harmful to them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough if you could just go, well, you know...
Even one who was told by his doctor that it's already screwed him up.
Yeah, he said no.
No, it wasn't the steroids.
It's something else.
It's something else, that's right. And I mean, you know, you hear it all the time. I mean, when Jeep Swenson passed away, you know, this was many, many years ago, and he was really good friends with Hogan and Davey Boy Smith especially. And, you know, Jeep Swenson took so many steroids. He was a 400-pound guy. You know, most fans probably don't remember him because he worked Texas in the late 80s. But he hung around the wrestlers. He did win WCW pay-per-view about a year before he died.
He was in a Batman movie, too, I believe.
Yeah, that's actually what he's most famous for, was being in the Batman movie. And when he died, I mean, it was like the people in wrestling, you know, not all of them. There were people in wrestling who knew, and there were other people who were just like, it couldn't have been the steroids, you know, because you know that no one ever dies from steroids.
Yeah, of course.
So.
Okay, and regarding, I know you're going to have Dr. Tom in a little bit. I remember seeing Dr. Tom early 80s, maybe late 70s on Georgia Championship Wrestling. And
that was early in his career, yeah.
Yeah, I remember him being young, and I remember he was like kind of an upper mid-carder, and I always expected him to become one of the next breakthrough stars, but it just never happened. And pretty much after that, the only time I would hear about him would be in a little bit in the Aftermag or something like that. And I guess he would also freely admit that he's probably one of the guys that he let the drugs take control, and that pretty much cost him his career when he could have been a superstar.
I don't know. We can talk to him about that. I mean, he had his issues. He was from that era. I don't know that it, Tom did well in most places, especially when he was with the Heavenly Bodies. I think that was probably his best period. Did well in Alabama, Memphis, Portland, Oregon. He worked a lot of smaller territories, and I think part of that was because he was a smaller guy. And, maybe he enjoyed being, a smaller guy in Portland, Oregon could do very well. Work near the top of the card. In some of the other territories, they wanted big guys. So, I mean, that may be why he didn't, spend as much time in trying to get into the bigger territories. We could ask him about that, though. It's a good question. Okay?
That's pretty much all I had, then.
Okay, good enough, Ed.
Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to go to Jeff in New York. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I have two questions. First question is regarding Pritchard. I was wondering if you guys could ask him, go into Bite This, because I've listened to that show off and on, and I don't listen to it anymore because I'm just sick and tired of all the soft questions that people ask. But what do you expect on that kind of a show? Well, I understand that, but I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. It just seems it's just really disheartening when it's an internet show. You think that internet wrestling fans listen to it, not casual fans. So,
but it's WWE, and I think that's the kind of show that they want. They don't want
this show.
No, they don't want this show. They want a show where the guys are half in their storyline characters, and it's more. I think that, more based on, entertainment. I don't think that they want to get into heavy issues, at least not in depth on that show.
Mm-hmm. But do you think Tom was ever frustrated with that format, or did he not care?
You'd have to ask him. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what, his personal thoughts would have been on that, So, yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. All right. Second question, I guess it's another throwback to the 80s, and the 70s actually too. I was watching this past Monday, and I've enjoyed Raw. I tried to really enjoy it, but this past Monday, it's just, I just couldn't get into it. I was really, really bored by it. I just really feel that the storylines are just so stale and uninspiring. Now, finances, withstanding, do you think that if, hypothetically, they went back to a format that was similar, before the 90s where they had a pay-per-view, every 3 months and, they had...
That's not happening. I mean, it's just not happening. It's not even something... they make so much money on these pay-per-views, and the pay-per-views carry the company. Before, when we're talking about those days, there was this feeling that Vince had, and then we all had it, was that, a pay-per-view had to be like the big boxing match, or else nobody would buy it, and you could only do, at the beginning maybe 2 or 3 of them a year, or, you would, kill your house show business. Well, what happened is the pay-per-view business became so much more of a profit margin than the house show business that wasn't a concern, and we went to a period where, with ECW during the boom period, we were having 30-plus Sunday pay-per-views per year, almost every, between WCW, WWE, WWF, and ECW, and people were buying them. And I think that, what's happened is, we're never going to go away from once a month. I don't know that, I don't think we'll go down from 14, quite frankly, because when they did those 3 pay-per-views in 6 weeks, the one pay-per-view that we all expected to bomb, did better than we thought. So I think that they feel that they've got this steady audience that's going to buy every pay-per-view, and that is enough to make them a lot of money. So they're not going to go away from that formula.
But you don't think it would actually, something like that would actually improve the storyline, the freshness of the show? Because
less pay-per-views, I don't think that's the issue. I think that the issue is that, they haven't had a lot of movement of talent. It's the same guys on top for a long period of time. I
almost think it would be worse, because if you look at, sometimes they'll book, and they have no direction until all of a sudden there's a pay-per-view next week, and then they kind of have to throw a card together and have stuff sort of make sense.
Yeah.
So I think if you had, 2 or 3 months in between pay-per-views or something like that, it would just be 8 weeks of directionless TV, and then finally they'd have to throw something together. I just can't see them doing a longer build to anything, because it's more a problem with them having no patience than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're very welcome, Jeff. Okay, special guest who is on the line right now from Stamford, Connecticut is Tom Pritchard. Tom, how are you today?
Doing great, Dave. How you guys doing?
We're doing really good. Tom, very sad week. I know you've known Ray Traylor for a long, long time, and any thoughts on Ray Traylor?
Well, actually, I talked to Ray the week before, and it was kind of a shock to all of us. Bryan Armstrong called me on Thursday morning and asked me if I'd heard about it, and of course, I didn't know what he was talking about, and he told me, and it was a shock, and it was it almost is a numbing influence, numbing feeling these days when you hear something like that. But I just talked to Ray the week before, and he was going to call me back, and Brad told me that he talked to Ray as well, and the last time they saw him was in a spot show in Georgia, and they said they had to call each other more because they were talking about Kurt Hennig and Rude and Hawk dying. They didn't want to be not having contact with each other. I know what he meant, because Ray is one of those guys that I would call in the business, and one of the guys I would consider a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sad, it was shocking, and all too sad and all too real and all too common, I guess, lately.
Now, based on what I've heard, and I don't know if you've heard different, there was no, like with some guys, there's almost like a warning, or maybe, like just an example, Road Warrior Hawk, in the sense of maybe there wasn't a warning, and certainly, everybody was shocked at the same time when it happened. You're going like, boy, he's had bad health for a number of years.
Sure.
With Ray Traylor, I mean, never heard a thing.
No, and Ray, again, told me just before that he had been really good and feeling great, and he was happy to be home. So, again, I think it brought to everybody's attention that you just never really know in this world, and, man, there's a few people that I've called just this past week, and not trying to sound melodramatic, but just tell them, say, hey, I wanted to just call and see how you're doing, and it really comes back into your face when a guy like that, like Ray Traylor, passes away, because he was such a good friend of myself, Brad Armstrong, and I guess the Steiners. There's a group of guys who we all called, and we were all friends, and that was really, really a bad thing.
How are you doing? I mean, you've been working in wrestling. I was trying to come up with when you started, because as long as I remember wrestling, you were involved in it even before you were a wrestler, I had known of you working with Paul Bosch in Houston. Probably, you had to have been a teenager, right?
Right, yeah. Actually, I started taking pictures when I was 12 years old. That would have been 1972 for Paul Bosch, and actually for Japanese magazines and Wrestling Review. And
so you had the same background as like Eddie Gilbert and Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette. Yeah.
Exactly. We were just a fan from the time I can remember, and eventually it just worked. I worked my way. We went every Friday night. Worked my way into working for Paul. Once Gino Hernandez started wrestling, I worked for Paul as his assistant, and then worked during the summers in the office. And I actually had my first pro match October 20th, 1979. And then I went to California, and I think that's where I saw my first Observer through my good friend Lloyd Lee. Mm-hmm. And I was reading some of this stuff, and I wondered how you got so much inside information, man. But then I realized you were a fan like we were growing up, and because I don't know if you remember Ron Dobrat's wrestling.
That was like my, I guess, inspiration in a sense. I mean, if there was an inspiration, I mean, because I was 11, 12 years old reading that newsletter.
Yeah, so was I, and I got all those things too as a fan, and that always interests me. So it's something that I've done my whole life, and now it really capped off by working with WWE.
What I mean, in your situation, did you have any warning or inklings that this was going to happen to you?
No, not really. It's one of those things that it can happen, but you never expect it. And I really didn't expect it, but looking back, maybe I should have. Whenever a regime change takes place, or whenever somebody else takes over, they, I believe, probably want things. Well, I'm certain they want things done their way, and that's it. And which is fine because it's that kind of business. They have to. They being the boss, they have to make changes and what they feel is appropriate and what they want to do. So I think I should have seen it in hindsight, but I really didn't.
So kind of thing, you weren't shocked?
Well, I was very shocked. Actually, I was very shocked, and you never think it's going to happen, and when it does, you kind of go, wait a minute, ooh, what am I going to do now? So
yeah.
Well, especially how many years had you been with the company?
We had actually our first match, SummerSlam. Well, no, actually it was in the summer of '93, and so I've been with WWE since '93. Started the developmental system in '96. So, a little over 10 years?
Yeah, it'd be almost 11 now.
Yeah, you're right. 204. So, yeah, and it was, I can't complain. It was a pretty good gig.
Now, developmental, something that, we watch religiously because it's kind of like you're trying to watch and see the future of wrestling. What were your thoughts? I mean, like, in 2000, and it's funny because when I was driving up here for the show, I was thinking, in 2000, WWE was this company that was like, of all the companies I'd ever seen, in watching wrestling, it was, to me, the model company. I mean, you had entertainment, you had great wrestling, you had great television, and the developmental system. I mean, I think that there were 3 or 4 territories. I mean, it was like, I'm not saying it was like the perfect thing, because the perfect thing would have been the old territorial system, and then you can keep talent fresh. But that's not going to happen again.
Right.
But you had like the Puerto Rico and Memphis and Ohio Valley for the guys starting out, and you had we would watch Ohio Valley and we'd see Shelton Benjamin and Brock Lesnar and some of these guys, and I mean, even before that in Memphis, there was Rock and Kurt Angle and I mean, and of course that's before 2000. But the point is, we're always seeing these guys that were going to come in, and you couldn't wait for them to come in. And now I've just sensed that it's from 2000 to 2004, I think that or maybe the company changed a lot and not for the better. And I don't know. I mean, is there anything that you would look at as to what happened in those years? Was it just the fact that it was so successful that they rest on their laurels, or just not enough good guys were trying to get into wrestling, maybe?
Well, I don't think it's that anybody was trying to rest on their laurels, but a big part of this business is getting an education on the road and on-the-job training. You can train and work out all you want for 8 hours a day in front of an empty arena, but you have to really get out on the road, and you have to really feel it to get good, and you also have to make those road trips and talk to the veterans and the guys who have done that before. And that's why I think in 2000 you still had guys like Rock, who was a natural, and he grew up around this business. He understood what it was like to travel from place to place and see some of the veteran guys that really understood this business. Same thing with Austin. Austin starved and knew what it was like, and Triple H the same way. You know, he worked some of these independents up here around New England, and who else were some of the guys? Mick Foley. All these guys came from what you would call the old school. And then all of a sudden, it kind of dwindled down to, we were getting the 20-year-old guys who were entering WCW, or even, I want to say, our developmental system at the time. They had only grown up watching WWF, and they didn't know anything about the territorial system, didn't know about how Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, and even Bob Orton Jr. were big stars before they actually came up to WWF at that time. But they were big stars because they were able to go to different territories and learn from different veterans and learn the business. And I think that's the biggest thing that's missing now, because you don't necessarily, you have maybe one or two, maybe 4 or 5, thinking about it, veterans in the locker room who understand about the territorial system, understand about the bottom line in this business is you have to feel it. You can't just watch it on TV like on a Raw or SmackDown and get the feel for this business. Yeah, that's my opinion. I think you have to really go. You have to go and see what gets the crowd going. You have to go and see how the crowd gets emotionally involved, how the guys are the conductors in the ring. Guys like Triple H and Shawn Michaels, when they have a match, they call it in the ring. And they listen to the crowd, they get the reactions, and they feel it. A lot of these guys just want to go out and do a performance, and it looks like a performance. And I think that's the biggest thing that was really, really evident when you had guys like Rock and Foley and Austin, Triple H, Shawn, and all those guys in the territory or in the company at one time, because they all came from the old school and they all were fans growing up, and they felt it, and they know what they knew what got them interested in this business, and they gave the same thing to the people who watched them.
Now, you worked multiple territories.
Yep.
What territory would you say you learned the most, and why?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The place that two places I learned the most, although I didn't realize that I learned it at the time, was Atlanta and then Pensacola. When I went to Atlanta in 1982, I was really naive and young about the politics, not just in the business, but the politics in life. I didn't realize what opportunity I had and what opportunities I didn't grasp while I was there until I got in Pensacola in the Birmingham territory and finally learned how the other side of the business works, the politics and the the business side about if somebody doesn't want you there, if somebody doesn't want you to be in that spot, guess what? You're not going to be in that spot, no matter how good you are. And I didn't realize a lot of that. I was just happy to be on the card. I was just happy to be in the business. And then I saw the other part of it, and they were really good learning experiences, although, by the time I was in Pensacola, I was like 26, 27, and, I was around the Armstrongs, who have always been really good friends of mine, and they were part owners in the territory, and I could have stayed as long as I wanted. In Atlanta, with Jim Barnett, he called me into his office, and I had just got married 2 days before I went to Atlanta and made a real big mistake, and Jim told me I should get divorced, and I told him no. Well, that was a big mistake. But, and that's something I didn't realize until later, because I just wanted to be one of the boys. I didn't want to play games, didn't want to play politics. I just wanted to wrestle and get by my work. And you know what? You really can't do that all the time.
We're here with Tom Prichard, who's been around professional wrestling since he was 12 years old, so that would be about 33 years.
Yeah, I'm 45 now, so how long is that?
Yeah, 33 years.
Yeah, close to it.
Wow.
I've been watching wrestling since I was 4, man. So, hey, by the way, is this Bryan Alvarez, like the friend of Rip Rogers that he talks about so much?
Did Rip die?
No, he didn't die. He talks about you a lot, though.
No. Yeah, that would be.
You're friends with. I didn't even know you were friends with Rip Rogers, Brian.
Oh yeah, I just exposed him, man. Yeah.
Hey, you remember Buddy Wayne?
Sure I do.
He got married.
Oh my God. Well, tell him to get a divorce. Tell him Jim Barnett said so. Before he died. Yeah.
Well, tell him who he got married to.
Ed Moretti's niece, Shauna.
Oh, jeez. Well, at least he kept it in the family then, huh?
Did you know Shauna? Did you know Shauna?
Did I what?
Did you know Shauna, by any chance?
No, I don't, but I know Ed.
Yeah, I know you would know Ed because you worked, well, you must have bumped in Portland, Oregon, probably, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One thing, as far as the developmental system goes, since you've been affiliated with it and everything, was there ever a guy who you saw and you said, boy, this guy's going to make it, and for some reason, he didn't, and conversely, someone who you were not expecting to ever make it big that did? Just, I'm throwing those things out at you.
Yeah, I think Sean Stasiak was one guy who I thought just couldn't miss because he had a great look, and then after getting to know Sean, I learned that he was his worst enemy, and classic example of a guy who just couldn't get comfortable, couldn't feel it, overthought everything, but I just knew he was a can't miss. On the other side of that, I think guys like Nick Densmore, Rob Conway, Mike Bucci were some guys who the majority didn't feel they would make it, and other guys in OVW were always saying, hey, man, you're missing the boat on this guy. Check it out. Dave Bautista, I would have said he's got a great look, but in the beginning he was timid and not really confident, and once he got around doing some of the live events, he got with it, and he's still got a long way to go, but I mean, he's a lot better than he was when he first started. Ron Waterman's a guy too that I thought was a can't miss, and just sometimes you get in there and you just it doesn't click.
We're gonna start with James in Tallahassee. James, what's going on?
Hey guys, how are you doing?
We're doing all right.
Awesome. It was sad this week about Ray Traylor. It really was.
Very much so.
I heard about it on Friday. I've been busy all week, and just another childhood hero gone.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, and Tom can speak of this knowing him, but I mean, one of the things, I mean, in wrestling, there are good guys, bad guys, jerks, and I haven't heard one person say anything bad about Ray Traylor.
Yeah.
Ray was a first-class guy, and he treated everybody decently with respect. He's one of those guys, again, like a Brad Armstrong, that was good to have in the locker room and always smiling and always having a good time.
I will never forget when he was the guardian angel and he turned on Sting at like 1995, one of the Clash of Champions, and it was the funniest thing. After the match, he cut just the most hysterical promo. I don't know if any of the listeners or anybody remembers it, but it was just so funny how the words came out, because I guess he was excited.
Well, one thing about Ray is, and if you notice, he was always in a good spot. He was always put there because he was a likable guy and he was a real guy. And if he came out excited, well, that's because that was Ray, and people could either laugh at it and get with it, and he laughed at it probably after he watched it. So that's a good thing about him.
Now to Dr. Tom Pritchard, I will never forget the match you guys had in 1993 SummerSlam against the Steiner brothers. That just blew me away, that match.
Well, I tell you what, I won't forget it either, because it was our first WWE pay-per-view, man, and the Steiners were great, and I don't think we had a match that could top that one for the rest of our timeline in WWE. But it was really great. I had a good time. It was in Detroit, their hometown, and with Cornette there, it couldn't have happened any better.
We're going to go, James, you want to hold on or anything else?
I'll hang on. Well, just that they think it's bad to callers on bicycles. They should have listened to Alex from Puerto Rico and James from Kentucky when you had a yada.
Oh, my God, I know. Anyway.
One more quick question about the Survivor Series back in '93, which was really strange to see a title belt not of that promotion. You know, the Smoky Mountain Tag Team Championships defended on that pay-per-view with you guys winning it. Could you explain some of the details around that match, why it took place, and why we saw the Rock and Roll Express on WWF TV for, like, the first time ever?
Yeah, I think, again, that was a deal that Cornette arranged and with WWF at the time, making sure that Smoky Mountain would get a plug on TV. And the thing I remember most about that match is how dead and brutal the people were in Boston, because they didn't want to see us at all. We went out with our match and thought we were going to have a great match and go to it, and man, the Boston fans are brutal. That's something they'll let you know up here, man. They'll let you know when they don't like something.
Doesn't it frustrate you? Like, I mean, you guys in the Rock and Rolls were wrestling regularly in Smoky Mountain and tearing down the house, having great matches. And technically, I remember watching that match, and it was a really good match. I mean, does it frustrate you sometimes that, like, sometimes you go somewhere where, like, it's one thing if you stink out the joint and you know you did, and it's another time where they're not going to give you the time of day no matter what you do for them?
Yeah, it gets frustrating, but then you just realize, hey, that's life. You know, that's the way it is. New York's the same way. In the Garden, I'll never forget, man. They were brutal, and they let you know if they like something or they don't. And when we went out with Rock and Roll, and we thought we had a great match, or we knew we were going to have a great match. We just knew it going in, and man, they let us know they didn't like any of those Southern boys. Smoky Mountain, boy, it was, you know, but that's their prerogative, man. Whoever wants to cheer for you, boo you, or just let you know that they don't give a damn.
Okay, James?
Hey, you guys take care. It's great talking to all three of you.
Okay, you're very welcome, James. I want to ask you, how much of a hand did you have in the training of Rock? Or any?
Rock or Brock?
Rock.
Like Maivia?
Yeah, as in Dwayne Johnson, yeah.
Well, no, I didn't have a hand in signing him. Patterson actually saw him in Florida, and we signed him. He was working in Memphis at the time, and when we signed him, brought him up here in '96 with Mark Henry and Akam Albrecht. And I had nothing to do with actually signing him, but he'd already been trained, and he had already been in the ring for a few months before he got to us. Then he trained with me and Mark Henry and Akam for, I believe, like 3 months, and then he made his debut at Survivor Series, I believe it was. And after that, you know, he went on to being what he is. But I hate to say stuff like, you know, I trained The Rock, I trained Kurt Angle, because, yeah, I might have helped them along the way, but there were other people involved in their training as well. And that's one thing, like I read sometimes, and with all due respect to Dory Funk Jr., I was up here training people before Dory came, and then once Dory left, I continued training people up here. So, you know, you can say you trained all these guys, but if you were just there for them or with them for a week, that really doesn't constitute that you trained them and taught them everything they know, because a lot of these guys who came in for the camps, like a Sean Morley and Edge and guys like that, they were pretty damn good before they got there. The Hardy Boys were really damn good before they even came into our camp. So, you know, yeah, I can take credit for being in the ring with them and training them, but it wasn't just me and it wasn't just Dory. There were other people involved too, and those guys, you know, had a lot of natural talent anyway. But Rock, as far as your original question, no, I didn't have a lot to do with signing him. I just had like maybe 3 months training with him, and he's still, I'm glad to say, he's still the same guy today that he was back then.
Did you know he was going to be like a sure thing when you started working with him, or did it take you a while to be convinced?
Well, you know, you could tell he was a natural. You could tell by the way he sold everything. When you lock up with somebody, you can pretty much tell that he knows what he's doing. So nobody could have guaranteed, or nobody could have predicted that he would be this big. But he was a natural. He had the look. He was young. He had to get rid of that chia pet haircut. But
yeah.
We were hoping that he'd be big, and man, he surpassed everybody's expectations. Same thing with Austin. You know, nobody could have predicted how big he would have been. Everybody was raving about Steve when he first started, but nobody could have ever predicted that he would become as big as he was.
What did you think of Randy Orton in his early days?
Another natural. Now, Randy did come in, and he trained with me a couple days, like for a week here in Stamford, just to get a look at him. He's another guy who was just natural. When you grabbed a hold or when you went to do something, he'd react naturally. And you could tell he had it, and he's got that, kind of like Rock was a natural cockiness, and it was just him. Randy had that same thing. He was a good kid, nice kid, but he just couldn't help himself, man. He's just that natural cocky. And he knew how to move. He knew how to step in the ring, walk in the ring like he belonged there. So, yeah, you could kind of tell he was going to be something.
Were there any guys with great backgrounds, whether it was athletic or something, where they really thought, they had someone special, and when you locked up with them or when you first started, it was just like, they either weren't a big enough fan or they just didn't get what wrestling's supposed to be. And
Occam, Alvarez?
Oh, I don't know about Occam. Occam didn't make it, but I mean, I'm just wondering if there are other, maybe, amateur guys that maybe we never even heard their names that were even involved in the program.
Yeah, sure. Bryan was a guy who, we thought, man, this guy could be pretty good. Amateur Greco-Roman, but he just didn't understand. He wasn't grasping it. And, you have to feel this stuff. Sylvester Turkai, great guy. I know he's over in Japan. I know he's big over there, and that's great. But what my experience with Sylvester was, he was missing that it factor. He just, for this style over here, he didn't know when to be aggressive and when not to be, or when to turn it on and make it real and make it natural. And, guys like that, you kind of think, man, they have all the tools, but now you realize it's not that easy to just go out there. You're not going out there pretending to do something. You have to feel it, and you have to actually do it. There's other guys that, I never really would have thought made it, like Brock Lesnar. I thought here's a big guy, big amateur guy, and I didn't know how quick he'd pick it up, but man, he really did pick it up.
Let's go.
He took a guy like Rey Mysterio, who he should have just ate up if he didn't realize how to do the business, but he did, and he made Rey look like a world beater. He made Rey look like it was possible for Rey to beat Brock.
I remember Brock. I mean, when he really got going, they had a match in San Jose with Chris Benoit, and that match was. I mean, I remember it was the main event on a SmackDown TV show. And a lot of people probably remember the match. I remember leaving the building, and everyone was just and Brock was already a big superstar by then anyway, but people were just going like, wow, we really saw something special there.
Right.
Let's go.
It makes a lot on both guys' part.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Steve in Las Vegas. Steve, what's going on?
Hello, Dave. How are you doing?
Doing very well.
Good. I didn't plan for Dr. Pritchard to be there, but I'd like his opinion on this. Reading about Jim Barnett in his Life and Times, and man, this might come off like the wrong way if I say it the wrong way, but it's an opinion I've wanted to discuss. Barnett complains somewhere that, hey, why is John Cena being put in his hip-hop outfit when, he looks so much better, in his trunks? Now, that's going to sound like, oh, well, Barnett and his tendencies and this and that and the other thing. But the man has been in the business. Don't tell me that Dr. Pritchard, there weren't ring rats your whole career there. that sex and violence. I mean, the female wrestlers they make them obvious as sex objects, but the male wrestlers have always been sex objects. And part of it, if you're going to accept the ring rats, you're going to have to accept that 10% or 5% that follow and pay tickets because they're attractive in a different way. Do you see any reality to that of the sex and violence aspect to it?
Well, yeah, man. I mean, let's be honest here. You got to think about who to watch a bunch of guys in their underwear, on Monday and Thursday nights. Either it's going to be girls watching the hot guys, or guys watching the hot chicks, or guys watching the hot guys. I mean, it's Yeah, that's always.
Where do we fit?
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. I think we watched it growing up as fans because it was that mystery that was still there. Everybody could tell you it was a work. That's great, but they really didn't know how it was a work. Now everybody knows the curtain's been pulled back. You see a guy work the buttons and things like that. And now we're trying to bring it back down to that mystery again. But I think, yeah, sex and violence has always been a part of this business, and you're always going to have. It's just like the military. Are there gays in the military? Well, yeah. I mean, it's a fact of life, man. Yeah. Are there people who watch for the guys for different reasons? Sure. But we have a mix of it both. We're not trying. I don't think WWE is trying to appeal to the highest common denominator or the lowest common denominator. I think WWE is trying to get everybody in the middle, and not going to discriminate against anything, no matter why you watch, as long as you watch. And that's just I think you have to realize that going into it. Hey, did I answer that question? Is that what he was asking, actually?
Steve, did he answer that question the way you wanted to?
No, I thought he answered it in refreshing, and he wasn't defensive about it and stuff. I just got to thinking of it, and I just remember. Dave, I don't even know how old you are, Dave, but if you remember wrestling magazines in the 70s, to stay afloat, they would, half the magazine or a third of it would be female wrestlers in bikinis in the apartment house.
The apartment house wrestling in the after magazines. We all remember that, yeah.
And also, what I think has taken over that you should know this, and I think you might know this about Mildred Burke, after her professional career was over, she was actually the pioneer in making home movies of having a school for female wrestlers and have them teach them, and then sew tapes on that. And she never put the connection together till the end of her life of oh wow, the men were like checking out the chicks too. And it's a huge underground business on both sides, on the hetero and on the gay side. That those are the missing territories that don't exist anymore.
Well. Okay.
I don't know.
No, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean, you know what I'm saying, that the market was already there when it wasn't so, blatant and all that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's always been an underground market in a lot of places for wrestling, no doubt.
Right. Yeah, and the reason I say that is because when I was in relations, we would get tapes and letters from people who would hit me with all different angles, man, with what they could do. So, I mean, I know it's out there, and I know that, in every aspect, I think, in every aspect of entertainment, though.
No, so like a person like Jim Barnett, barring all his business sense and all that, wasn't it occasional his tendencies or his ideas, well, were they ever good for business because he thought it and somehow he had a pulse of general audience as well?
I'm sure he was. I mean, obviously he was successful, so I think that a lot of his ideas, I think what Jim probably did was surround himself with a lot of really smart people who knew how to book matches, who knew who would get over, but Jim also had his favorites, I'm sure, and a lot of times his favorites were everybody else's favorites. So Jim was a pretty smart man. I've heard that a lot of people don't think he was didn't have all the money that he said he did, but that's here and there. He actually, to be in the places he was and to do the things he did, he obviously had something on the ball and knew something about the business, whether it was TV or how to promote it and how to get into a territory and then leave when it was dry. So I mean, Jim did know, in my opinion, he knew what he was doing.
Well, you got to give credit because in some respects he was open about his minority status, and it was held against him a little bit, but he still succeeded. So, and I give credit to a lot of people in the wrestling business who were open-minded towards him.
They weren't always.
Yeah, they weren't. I think there was a lot of people who weren't as open-minded. So, and I don't know that Jim was. He didn't necessarily broadcast, but once you met him, you kind of looked at him and said, I get it.
No, he didn't flaunt it. And in fact, I'll tell you what, when the Jim Wilson book came out, he was upset in a sense that it was so strongly written that he was, not realizing that, quite frankly, everyone already knew anyway.
Sure, but and by the way, I read the Jim Wilson book, and what a biggest crock of crap. Man, to look at it, and I don't know if you'll agree or not, and if you don't, that's fine, but to even suggest that Jim Wilson would have been in line for the World Championship, come on.
Oh, yeah. Horrible. Oh, yeah. Especially by 73 when he'd been in the business for years and hadn't gotten anywhere, basically.
Right, and he was rotten.
Yeah.
To the core.
So he might have been right behind Sky Low and Little Beaver, but
yeah.
Okay, Steve, thanks very much.
Hey, thank you very much. Good show, and Doctor, thank you for your input there. I enjoyed it.
Okay, we're going to go to Kelly in Tennessee. Kelly, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing really good.
Hey, I just wanted to ask Tom Pritchard. I grew up a huge wrestling fan. I grew up in Sacramento. I used to watch, wrestling on Saturdays with Hank Renner.
I grew up on that stuff, too.
Yeah, and I used to remember at 10 o'clock at night on Channel 40, we used to get the Southwest Championship Wrestling with, like Ivan Petsky, and I'm a huge wrestling fan. I wanted to ask Tom, do you think, I know, wrestling is the sports entertainment, but do you think the theatrical wrestling the characters will ever make it back into big-time wrestling? I hated it when they unmasked Kane, because, I just love the mystery about the guy, the mask, he comes out, even remember, the Papa Shango character, the Ultimate Warrior character. Do you think, characters like that, is there a place for that in wrestling again?
I think that if it goes back around, I've always said what's old is going to be new again, and I think we're finding out now, with the kind of wrestling that I grew up on, I believe Dave grew up on, and probably that Bryan Alvarez guy. You grew up on storytelling matches, and that's what we're seeing right now. But after that had its run, then Vince came out with making this sports entertainment more obvious with characters, and Hulk Hogan and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik Macho Man, and the guys who look larger than life and who really were that character in other places too. But Vince, when he took these guys up here, he made them even larger characters, even larger than life, the Hillbilly Jims and Uncle Elmer's and things like that. Yeah, I do think that will come back eventually, because it'll be maybe another 20 years, but yeah, eventually I do. And I kind of miss some of those characters too, even though it was hokey and looked at it, you said, oh my God, how could this be? But at the same time, if you look at it, a lot of people were going to the matches back then.
What do you think of stuff like the miscarriage angle? Do you think that's too over the top for WWE in 2004?
Well, I don't know about over the top. She could have given birth to a leg, already had a hand.
Yeah, we had that one too.
Right. So I don't know if it was over the top. I don't know if it was. You see, I think what a lot of people don't understand, and maybe you should, by God, is that the idea going into Raw and SmackDown these days is that it is supposed to be an action-adventure TV series, and not necessarily like you're watching just a wrestling program. And I guess, and I don't know, because I'm not in the writers' meetings anymore, but the writers come up with these scenarios, and obviously at the time it sounds good. I don't know, if the miscarriage part of it is something that I would have come up with, but at the same time I wouldn't have come up with shooting Big Show with a tranquilizer gun. But
I sure wouldn't have in the same week. It's just, to me, I don't know. It's just not. It's too much in the same week, because I don't know where you follow it.
It's over the top and it's over the edge, but at the same time, it's different and it gets people talking about it.
If they talk about it in a good way, and I have seen stuff that I didn't like that got over, at the right time, and other times it doesn't get over, and I don't know, I guess it's feeling like what the people want. Now one of the problems is that when you've got the base audience, they're not. I don't think that the base is Tom still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, I think that the base audience is, they're not as much. They don't have as much latitude as casual audience when it comes to wrestling, because they know what they want. But the problem is that to get that other audience, you kind of have to stretch sometimes and do that. But right now you're not getting them. So I think a lot of people are, kind of. I don't know. I thought that this last week was a little bit much when you have both of those.
Yeah, here's the thing. I talked to some friends of mine about that, and some friends who watch once in a while, and they told me they sat there and laughed when the big show was going down.
Let me tell you something. I had some friends over, actually some high school kids who were friends of my brother-in-law were all over watching SmackDown, and that's exactly what they did. They all laughed. When they were watching the show, when it was over, they didn't really like it, but they're cracking up watching him being the harpooned whale. I don't know if that was good or bad when it was over, though, but they did.
Well, yeah, and I realize I do. Being that I like old school wrestling, I wouldn't like it, but at the same time, I do understand that as long as you're watching, that's okay. You can laugh, you can cry, you can get mad, but just watch. And I think that's what everybody's going for these days. And if it's outrageous, if it's crazy, if it just gets people watching, that's because a lot of times you'll tell your friends, man, can you believe what they did on wrestling last night? You know what they did on SmackDown? They took out a gun and they shot this guy and he felt like an elephant. Yeah,
but I used to hear Russo say that, and he put a company out of business with that mentality.
Well,
not that he was the only one who did it, but he didn't help things.
No, you're a very good point, man, and right now, that's a point well taken.
One of the highlights of my week is reading Bryan's comedy stories.
You mean those are comedy stories, man? I was actually, Les would always bring them, and I would read them and thinking, wow, you know, was it Joe Stecker? I think has been
Frank Gotch.
Frank Gotch, pardon me, thank you.
The Frank Gotch stories, they're awesome, yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Okay, I want to ask you, Tom, as far as, is there some names or just a name that might pop into your head if I go, who is a guy who historically, maybe fans have forgotten or the younger wrestlers don't know, or someone who think somehow history has, kind of underrated, that made a big impression on you, like growing up, or when you were wrestling and you wrestled him and go, this guy's just awesome, and for some reason he never got his due?
I remember because I was born in El Paso and grew up there. We moved to Houston when I was 10, and I always tell this story. One of the local guys there were obviously the Funks and Ricky Romero and the Infernos, J.C. Dykes, and I remember thinking those guys were pretty damn good wrestlers. Then I moved to Houston in 1969, and before we left, real quick story, Grizzly Smith came on and was doing the cast iron stomach gimmick, and he told anybody, I don't care if you come off a ladder, you can't hurt me in my stomach. So he kept having these challenges. About the fourth week, Harley Race came in, busted through the interview and said, look, I've got my ladder here.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, exactly. He came off on his neck and then took him out on the ambulance and everything else. So Grizzly Smith, his career is probably ended and never be back in wrestling again. So we moved to Houston, and I get to Houston and start watching the new TV show, and I find out Johnny Valentine had come off second rope on Grizzly Smith's neck with an elbow drop and put him out of wrestling forever about the same time that Harley Race did. And so Harley and Grizzly have their feud. Settler in Houston, in El Paso. I get the newspaper results sent me every week, and then Grizzly Smith comes back 2 weeks later to Houston, gets revenge on Johnny Valentine. And Harley Race was a guy who really, I know he was 7-time world or 8-time world champion, whatever it was, and in history, looks at him as one of the greatest NWA champions of all time. But I also think guys like Grizzly Smith, Ricky Romero, even Jose Lothario in Houston, Gino Hernandez, really only wrestled mainly in Texas and around that area. He wrestled a couple times in Atlanta. But, those are guys that I really thought should have and probably did make an impact everywhere else they went.
Okay, we're going to go to Chris in Vancouver. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Going really good.
Got a great show.
Thank you very much.
I have a couple of things for Dr. Tom. First off, one guy that really never materialized, I thought he actually had potential, was Tiger Ali Singh. The guy just fell off the map, and he was probably one of the biggest busts in wrestling history. I'd like to get Tom's comment on that first.
On Tiger Ali?
Yeah.
He was another guy who wasn't as good as he thought he was, and he got hurt, got injured, and his work ethic wasn't exactly the best, let's just say, and his attitude, you really have to work hard to get to make it in this business. You can't just have it handed to you just because your dad was a star in Japan. You have to work, and I don't believe he necessarily had that in him.
You know, I saw him at a wedding, and I talked to him, and he said that Vince McMahon made him big promises.
Well, one thing you always learn that nobody makes big promises, and they'll give you all the chances in the world. Vince, and I'm speaking of Vince because I know Vince and I know the kind of person he is. Vince will tell you that there's every opportunity in the world here, but you have to make it happen. It's just like, again, you can talk about guys like The Rock, Randy Orton. They made it happen. It wasn't just handed to them. They were given the opportunity, but they took it and ran with it. And Tiger Ali didn't know how to work. His etiquette in the back wasn't the best. He was one of those guys who figured he was an elitist and he was better than everybody else because his dad was Tiger Ali's thing. And that's just my impression, my opinion of the guy. And this is after working with him in the ring and seeing how he conducted himself backstage and coming back from the ring. So.
And before they go, one last question. It's on Lex Luger. Was he ever supposed to get a WWF title reign? I mean, SummerSlam 93, I think Dave said he wanted to chase the title, but what's the story about WrestleMania 10 and why he wasn't given a world title reign? And if he did get the title reign, you think it would have materialized for him?
Well, I really don't know if he was scheduled to, but I can tell you this, I was here during that time, and the houses that Lex was headlining weren't doing stellar business. And Lex wasn't exactly getting over like I think everyone thought he would be. So I don't know if it was ever discussed if he was going to get the title or not, but just the way the reaction he was getting when he walked out and the houses that he was on top on weren't doing stellar business. So I think that might have had something to do with it, although, again, I don't.
Yeah, he was at one point, that was the direction when they did the Big Lex Express. They wanted to be the new Hulk Hogan, and
sure.
That was the idea, and what happened was the more they pushed him, the more Bret Hart got over, and, eventually...
Well, yeah, and again, I think fans, people who come to watch guys, can pretty much, they can see through who's not really as good as they think they are, and Bret was actually, during that time, Bret was getting over, and Bret knew how to connect with people, and Lex didn't. I guess Sid Vicious was another guy who, because of his eyes, because of his look, he got the opportunity, but he wasn't getting over, I guess, as well as everybody anticipated.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot. And before I let go, by the way, I just want to say that JBL is the worst WWE champion in the history of the company, and I'm ashamed that RVD is not getting pushed the way he is because, he headlined one pay-per-view back in 2001, No Mercy, and, he's in feuds with Rene Dupree. They should handle him properly. I think it's a joke.
Well,
yeah, that's cool. Here's the deal about this business. Again, it's subjective on what bookers or what a promoter will see and or how they feel. At the same time, you have to realize if it's not JBL as champion, who else on SmackDown deserves to have the title? Eddie had it. I thought he did a good job. Bradshaw had it. He has it. I think he's doing a good job. But you see, I know I'm speaking from a biased point of view probably because I know John's work ethic and I know what he does, and I know how he's thought of backstage. Rob Van Dam, same way, great guy, but I don't know if he really wants to be anything but just Rob Van Dam. You know what I mean? I think he wants to go out, and I think he wants to have a great time, have great matches, and he's not interested in being the world champion or anything like that. Again, I'm just assuming, and this is just my opinion, and I think that that's probably why that's happening.
That brings up something. There are guys in TNA, and I don't want to mention any names right now, but that want to work with certain guys so they can have their certain what would be called great matches, and they are good matches, but at the same time they don't want to work with guys who would up them in like put them higher, so to speak, in the pecking order, because some of those guys aren't as much high spot workers. Did you ever find that in WWE where you would have a guy, like let's say there was I want to work with my friend, we go out there every night and we have really good matches, as opposed to, we want to get you in this story with this guy, we can tell a good story. It's just like, yeah, but I can't do my match, so to speak.
You know, I don't see that as much. I didn't see that as much when I was working, for instance, when we were the only bodies here. And I really haven't seen that as much, well, actually 10 years I've been here, as funny as it may sound, because I know that Triple H and Shawn probably love to work together. You can just tell by the way they get in there. But most of the guys want to work with somebody that they can have a good match with, and not necessarily about the high spots, and it's not necessarily about getting their stuff in, because that's mainly what the agents are preaching these days, is it's not about getting all your spots in, it's about getting the match over. If the match gets over, then you get over. Again, in theory, I know that doesn't always take place, and that's not always the case, but most of the time, that's what the guys are concerned about, from what I understand, and from, again, everything that's been told to me. Doing the high spots and just having a car wreck, I think that's a little passé these days. If you don't get out and tell a story and have a good match, then it's going to show through that you can't work. And a good worker, in my opinion, is somebody who can work with anybody and adapt. You either bring them to your standards, or you make their abilities stand out even more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Let's go to...
What are your thoughts on TNA?
What's that?
What are your thoughts on TNA?
Who is what?
On TNA, on Jeff Jarrett's promotion.
You know what? I've seen some of the shows, and some of the shows I've seen, I shook my head, and other shows I've seen, I thought were pretty good. I think there's still a lot of elements in there that could be ironed out. That's what I think about TNA.
So before we go, I wanted to ask you, how is your brother doing?
He's doing well, thanks. He's at home right now, just trying to take care of some things and kind of chill out.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any timetable on when he's going to be back, or?
No, I don't. He's hopefully we'll see him back the next couple weeks. I mean, I hope so. He's just taking care of some things with his family and making sure everybody's okay and kind of taking it easy.
Okay, we're going to go to Mike in Winchester, Virginia. Mike, what's going on?
Yeah, how you doing, man? I'm just passing through Winchester. I'm from Bologna Beach, Virginia, originally.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask Tom, what was his wrestling name, for one?
His wrestling name was Tom Pritchard.
Uh-huh.
His wrestling name was Tom Pritchard.
Yeah. Yeah. That was your wrestling name?
Yeah, that was my wrestling name, man.
I don't want to sound...
Well, I had a couple others. I mean, Dr. X, and then it was the one I'm least proud of, but, yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't, a lot of them, they go by different names. I thought, I'm trying to place you.
Yeah, well, it's hard to place sometimes. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Tom, how did you get... I know the story, but tell everyone how you get the name of the doctor, because that kind of followed you till the end of your career.
Yeah, well, that was a Robert Fuller thing, man. I don't know if we have time or not, but basically it came down to Robert had this angle with him and Jimmy Golden going to work against the Rich Cousins, and he brought this guy out on TV, and they taped up Tommy's legs to the bottom rope while they beat the living hell out of Johnny Rich, and then they came up to the interview stand with Gordon Soley and told everybody that from now on they're going to have their doctor with them at ringside. He's Dr. Love, and he's going to make sure that those Rich Cousins don't do anything to cut their pretty face. So after that show aired, the FBI called Robert and asked him where they could find this gentleman that was on TV with them, because he was wanted for cocaine trafficking. So they had to get rid of him. Yeah, coming the next week, I was riding with Jimmy and Robert, and I was wearing some doctor pants that Sherry Martel had given me in Nashville when I broke my leg, and we stopped to get something to drink. Around says, "Hot damn, boy, you'll be our doctor." That's pretty much how Dr. Tom came about.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
All right.
All right, hey, between The Rock, Stone Cold, Ric Flair, and Hulk Hogan, I know that money is different now than what it used to be, but who was the biggest superstar of the four?
Okay, your choice. Who's the biggest superstar of the four?
Let's see, Ric Flair, Stone Cold, and who?
Hogan and Rock.
Oh, Jesus, you know what? I'd have to actually say Stone Cold.
Okay, peak. I mean, I think it's a peak money drawing wise. I don't think anyone, merchandise and everything. I would think he was probably number one at his peak.
Yeah.
Hogan had more years, so it's just how you look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Tom, I want to thank you so much for being our guest tonight. And
I want to thank you guys. By the way, Bryan, Phil Ripper said hello.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and good luck to you, and we'll be catching up to you soon, and we'll see everybody next week.